most of you probably are aware of me or heard of me or heard about things. So Helen asked me just to come in to do a quick psychic surgery demonstration, really, mainly kind of aimed at therapists and that aspect. But obviously, this type of work is sort of open to everybody, so kind of going to cover quite a wide range of subjects. So the way I tend to work is, as you've probably seen already, is very informal, just down to earth, normal guy, just doing what I consider to be normal stuff. So feel free to sort of break in at any point, ask questions or talk, or so I don't really tend to have an agenda, because things just tend to work the way they do, as we all know that you work with spirit and they'll decide anyway. So I've kind of given up trying to run things to a certain degree. So what I'll do is I'll just do a quick sort of summary and profile of who I am and why I'm stood here and you're stood there. And then what I'll do is I'll basically move over to bring my guide in, whose name's Chen. So he's a little kind of short Chinese guy that talks very fast. So if he talks too fast, just someone say, can you slow down? Or if you can't hear properly, ask me to sort of increase the volume. And he will. He can talk non-stop for the whole day, so time could be a problem. So what I was sort of kind of thinking was, when I first spoke to Helen, she was talking about like an hour and a half, 2 hour session. So does that kind of work with you guys? So what I was thinking was to do like an hour basically, and then have a sort of like comfort break, toilet, water, and that kind of thing, and then kick off for like the second hour afterwards. So my general plan was to basically do a session whereby whoever feels they want to, or if no one does, then it's fine, but can come up here and actually lie down, and Chen will actually sort of start working on you. So you don't kind of have to have anything like drastically wrong. He'll just do like a top-up session, or an energy check, or just whatever kind of happens, really. So if any of you are thinking, oh yeah, I've got a bad leg or a bad shoulder, then this is a place to be. And at the same time, you can then give feedback to everybody else in the room as to the things that you're feeling, or the things you're not feeling, or whatever else. So it kind of works in like a dual aspect, so that you're providing real feedback to the people that you know, and obviously you know that it's real, if you like. It's one of the things I found when I kind of started to go to these sorts of things is you look at the people around the room and you see some guy doing a demo, but you don't know if it's his family or his friends and they're giving the right feedback or the wrong feedback. And it was one of the things that kind of niggled me, and I thought, stupidly, if ever I'm up the front rather than sat over there, that's something I want to make sure that everybody is very, very clear on, that what's going on here is real, and there is no kind of handshaking and setup and that kind of thing. So that's my. So if we sort of go back, so I was like Mr. Joe Normal, working in IT, doing normal stuff, considered to be normal. So no religious persuasion, not into ET, alien stuff, just pretty boring really, as most people tend to be. And then went through a few changes, got divorced, etc. Met my wife, now Jane. And it's her fault actually, not here. Either way. So when we got together, everything kind of changed for me really, and I started to see things and started to hear things, and it was pretty frightening. And I'd moved to a new house in Chippenham, at by Pewsham Estate, which we call a house on the hill. So I was living there on my own for about 6 months, and it was a nightmare really. So I was going to bed and there were things in the room. I was getting goosebumps all the time. I'd never had them before, and it was quite scary. And things progressed from there really, to the point that the heating would come on and off on its own. The heating would come on and I'd be lying in bed and be sweating, and I'd jump up, but the actual controller was off, but the heating was on, the radiator was hot, and weird stuff was going on. I thought I was actually sort of losing the plot and going mad. And Jane thought the same thing. So, and it kind of moved on then to the point that, banging, crashing outside the door. I was in bed with the lights on, so sleeping with the lights on by now, because I was frightened to death in the dark, and I'm seeing sort of shadows underneath the doorways, and that kind of thing. And it just, when you're new to this, you don't know where to go to get help, and it's really frightening, because you think, if I tell the doctor, then it's goodbye for quite some time. Tell your family, they think you're crackers as well. You can't talk to your friends about it, because they just laugh and say, we ought to be smoking, type thing. So actually, there's not really many places you can go. And I found that quite difficult. And then things got worse and worse, to the point that then things were kind of getting into bed with me at night, the covers were physically lifting up, and I could feel things getting in, and I was racing out the other side, shouting expletives and stuff like that, really. And then what kind of capped it all for me, really, one night I was lying in bed, and it was sort of 3 o'clock in the morning, which obviously is the worst time for most of us, if you're spiritual. And I actually came to and realised I was looking at the back of the wall as opposed to the ceiling, which meant that the bed was like 2 foot off the floor. And I absolutely jumped out my skin and screamed. And I had a laminate floor at the time, and the bed had casters. So the bed crashed back to the floor. And I, as all men do, pulled the covers over and spent the rest of the night shaking, didn't sleep a wink. So in the morning I came to and thought, well, that must have been a dream. And I got out of bed, and sure enough, the bed had moved off the casters completely. And I thought, right, this is like really bad. I need help. So at that point, I was sort of talking to Jane, and she had a friend who was a psychic, basically. And sort of after one thing led to another, she spoke to her and she connected to me in the house. I said, yeah, there's loads of stuff in it. It's really bad, so I can clear this for you. And I came home and it was like, wow, the house feels fine. No goosebumps anymore. And it was just, for a few weeks, it was okay. And then things started to happen again. And at that point, I thought, right, I need to understand this because I work in IT, I'm quite logically sort of left brain really. I thought, something's happening here to me that I need to understand. So I just did what we all do probably and headed off to Glastonbury, home with all the crackerjacks. I needed to be one, really. So I just basically purchased a whole stack of books and came home back to Chippenham and just went through these books like in sort of 5 minutes. And went back to Glastonbury and we bought more books, and sort of our life changed into this, onto the spiritual path really. And I started to understand what was going on and understand about negative things that can affect you and they can change your life. And then I ended up hooking up with a guy in Marlborough called Brian. He was really a really sort of connected guy and very good at sort of entity clearing and that kind of thing. And being me, I wanted to know everything in 5 minutes, which I'm sure you've all been there, and it just doesn't work that way. So the 5 minutes turns into 10 years, obviously, and you're still learning. So I started to go and see Brian and basically pay for his time, not to actually work on me, just to talk to me and explain things to me about what was going on and why it was going on and what I could do to it. So he started to teach me the sort of psychic protection techniques, and we'd look and I'd connect to things and I'd explain to him what I could see in my mind, and he'd say, yeah, okay, I've got that, and we'd sort of work through things. It was kind of an expensive training course, really, because I was hemorrhaging money. But every time I'd see him, I'd then come away with a whole million more questions, thinking, I need to cover this now, I need to cover why, human evolution and ETs and all this other stuff. So that led to then joining psychic circles and crystals and all the normal things, Reiki. And at the end of my Reiki master course, the lady Anne from Melksham said to me, I've got a little Chinese guy stood here called Chen, who talks a lot. And she said, he's going to be your guide and you're going to be doing this like psychic surgery stuff, which I'd never heard of, instantly really. So I said, okay. And then from there on in, he started to come through in psychic circles and groups and talk to me, and we'd have conversations and things. And I felt normal for a while. And then obviously then it got to the point that he actually wanted to come in and take over and actually speak physically. And that was when the trance work kind of started. So that's my kind of summary. So from there, obviously from doing the trance work and Chen coming in and taking over, then we set a website up and started, thought, right, I need to help people that were in my position, because I spent ages looking for someone to help. And the few people that we did find ran away pretty quickly when they realised what we were dealing with. There was some pretty black stuff going on in a certain part of our life. And some of the people that were into like mediumship and things weren't really set up to do that and work in that area. Hence they ran away very fast. So I thought, right, well, I can do this. I'm going to write a book that's really simple for normal people that can understand what's happening and hopefully help them in the same way that I kind of looked for help. And the next thing that happens is I'm then doing in-person work at home. So Jane and I had like a little kind of workshop in the garden. So we'd have people come in and put hands on. Chen would have a great time for a few hours, and I'd lose half the day every Sunday. And that happened for years. And now basically I tend to do mostly remote work on people rather than in-person physical type stuff, only because of sort of work demands, and that's the area that I've kind of moved into. And this is where I kind of teamed up with Terry. So that was 2 or 3 years ago, probably now.
About 4.
4. Yeah, it feels like
Time
3.
flies when you have fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we started getting into the more psychological aspects. So I started to find that a lot of clients have been drawn to me were sort of schizophrenics, hearing voices, quite difficult people with aspects of mental health problems. entity problems, people that have done witchcraft, a lot of black occult type problems as well. So some of these clients were pretty difficult, to say the least, really. But I kind of found that that was something that I enjoyed and I quite liked. So that was the area that we moved into. And now we've got to a point that sort of Terry and I have sort of kind of grouped together and set up a new website and looking at researching the whole hearing voices phenomenon, why people do, and when they hear voices, can we get rid of them, what we need to do to get rid of them. And the idea is that we're going to try and come up with techniques that are proven on multiple cases that actually work. And the idea is then that other therapists can take those techniques and people can go off and do it. So I don't want to be the guy that has to do this, really. I'm quite keen to work with Terry, come up with the way it works and it's proven, and then we can sort of push it into the spiritual domain and let other therapists pick up these same techniques and start working with these people.
And educate the psychiatrists.
Yeah, and obviously the medical profession is sort of over here and we're sort of there. And we're keen to join them really and start working hand in hand, which at the moment they're not that receptive, obviously. But we're thinking that they will be because we'll persevere. So it's, and you know, from my point of view, that's what Chen's telling me, that's where things are going. This whole mental health hearing voices thing is going to explode across the whole world, not just in our country. And therefore people need to be given the right skills to deal with these people because, you know, the mental health system can't cope already. And we're not even at, you know, kind of like the start stage really. So there's only so many institutions and places people can go that hearing voices that are psychotic and, you know, self-harming and all these sorts of things. So there is this big gap between what can be offered by the sort of medical profession and obviously people like us can actually intervene here and start to work with these people. So it's, and I'm not saying that we can fix all the problems, I'm not saying that the spiritual end is the right way completely. Everything has to happen as a dual aspect. So certain things we can do, and then we need to push them back into the medical profession and say, right, this guy now doesn't have any entities, he's got no negative things with him, etc. He might still have mental health problems, but now they are really mental health problems or emotional problems. It's not negative stuff that's encouraging the behaviour that you're seeing. And this is where we've actually started to make some quite good inroads with different patients, really. And we've got some quite tricky and difficult ones to deal with.
We've got a demonstration coming up here on the 28th, haven't we?
Yeah, so on the 28th, we actually got our Hearing Voices workshop basically in this room modelling to do exactly this. And we're going to invite people that actually hearing voices, so real schizophrenics to come in, and it's going to be alive. Let's see what we can do, how we can work with them. We get the real feedback in the room at the same time. And this sort of thing doesn't tend to get done in the normal way. So most people go and take tablets, wait 6 months, see your feeling, blah blah blah. But we're thinking that if we do it live with everyone around, with real people hearing voices, we'll know what works and what doesn't and what things we can do. And obviously the idea is to video the techniques and we can start to use that on the website and start to push it out to a wide audience. That's the plan. So I'm going to hand over to Chen now, basically, because he's ready to go. So does anyone want to be the first person on the table for a top-up type of thing? Or has anyone got problems they want looked at? Or there's no kind of racing around the table, doing all the Reiki positions and all that stuff. Far too much exercise for him. Work for just to connect, he'll come in, he'll start taking over, and then if you can just provide sort of verbal feedback as to what you feel.
What, as it's going on? Or
So as it's going on, just break in and say, well, hopefully not
But
gouge.
you have to break it. My leg doesn't bend that way.
Yeah, things like that would be good, really.
Okay.
So from my perspective, the whole point of psychic surgery is there's no pain because it's happening on an etheric level, not on the physical. So all of the work that Chen and his team will do will be on that etheric body, which is a complete blueprint copy of your physical body, with all the same organs, all the same things. So he makes a change to the mirror copy, and after a period of time, normally sort of 5 to 7 days, those changes vibrate back into the physical, and therefore you see the healing happening on the physical level. So if we've got negative entities or attachments in the etheric, as soon as he removes them, that the person should know instantly. So this is why I kind of favour this working in the darker area, because it's more instantaneous from a feedback perspective. So as soon as you move something out that's been connected to somebody that's causing voices or pains or telling them bad things, that should stop immediately, and therefore you can get that feedback. Yeah, my voice has stopped. Whereas when you're working on someone that's got a long-term illness or problem, obviously, you know, we're not working miracles here, it's going to take a time for that to happen. And there's obviously a behavioural aspect that has to be identified and looked at as well, which, you know, you're a therapist, so you know that if people have got bad patterns in the way that they live, you know, the things they eat and drink and things they do, drugs and that kind of thing, you can do your best on a spiritual, etheric basis, but if they don't change the physical, then you know, it's going to take a long time to actually get any type of benefit. So things have to work hand in hand. It's okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my hands on your tummy. Good evening to you all.
Good
My name
evening.
is Chen, as Andrews correctly addressed me. I am Andrew's principal guide. I like to think the more clever aspect of his duality. As you can see, much more elegant in terms of the conversation and speaking. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming today. Very nice to see you all. I appreciate your time is precious. We're here on the planet to make change and to do grandiose things, and I do appreciate your time. So, as Andrew has correctly said, I prefer to work in an informal manner, so please break in with conversations as you need to. Ask me questions that come up and that you feel, and I will be more than happy to answer. I will endeavour to do my utmost in the way that I approach and feed back to you. So I'm just going to start now with this young lady. So I work with a team, obviously, as we all do, of different energies. In this room this evening, I have 12 different energies. Nearly 5 of those would be considered to be extraterrestrial, therefore they've never been in human physical bodies, and they work hand in hand with us. So with that I'll just commence. What I'm going to do now is we're just going to give you an injection, my dear. So this would be an anaesthetic injection into the etheric body. So this will be possibly felt in the back of your neck. We will inject a liquid that you may feel run down the back of your spine, which may feel quite chilly to start with. After this has happened, you'll feel certain parts of your body will be anaesthetised, and these are the areas that we will start to work. So whilst this is actually happening, obviously I'm keen to carry on the conversations and talking. So being that I'm in a room of fellow like-minded people, therapists, possibly, the first thing I'd like to discuss with you, obviously you're working across different types of therapists, across different types of angles with different people, if you like. So the first thing I think we need to discuss is nutrition, because from my perspective, this is one of the big problems with the current medical profession, is that you have general practitioners, doctors, and other people that are not trained in nutrition. Now let's think, the human body is a vehicle, it's an engine. It needs certain things to go in, obviously certain things that come out as well, but primarily, if you don't treat the engine properly and don't provide it with the right nutritional requirements for the human species, then of course disease will manifest. And this is one of the big problems in the Western world, in my opinion, is that you have food that you're eating on a day-to-day basis that's incompatible with your physiology. So basically, the human species is effectively a intelligent animal, let's say. So intelligent animals, if we look at the animal kingdom, let's say, so if we look at tigers and such like, what's the first thing that they do when they kill their prey? They need their sustenance, their food. So the first thing they do is rip the stomach apart and they head for the heart. So they go straight in for the most vital organs that contain the most nutrition. Obvious, really. What do humans do? Humans, especially in the Western world now, don't quite like the idea of internal organs and such like. So you tend to go for breast meats and such like. Well, there's no real nutrition in that for you at all. So it's not ideal for the human species to be eating the types of food that many of you exist on. If you look at the human animal, it was designed to eat basically raw ingredients, berries and nuts and raw meat and such like. If you look at the dietary aspects now of most human beings, what you're actually eating is things that don't actually agree with you at all. So obviously some time ago farming became the in thing, and obviously wheat and such like was found to be quite tasty, can be changed into many forms, and can be made into many things. I'm sure most of you like the burgers and such like. The only slight problem is, of course, it doesn't actually agree with the human body at all. So if you eat lots of flour and wheat-based products, what you end up with is a very autoimmune response from a digestive perspective. So you start ending up with reflux conditions. You start to arrive at autoimmune diseases and such like. You start to have a lot of inflammatory conditions on the inside of your gut and the different types or different parts of your colonic system. So if you look at this problem, as therapists, you're dealing with people that are coming to you that really have got what we would call acute nutritional deficiencies. Therefore, they're not actually in a very good state to start with. And of course, many of the diseases and problems that you're all treating on a day-to-day basis, such as fibromyalgia, classic, CFS, those sorts of conditions are autoimmune problems, mainly from diet. So if people were to go back to the diet that actually works for the human body, they would find that their condition would almost recede very quickly. But unfortunately, of course, again, you have the concept of taste and sugars and sweetness, and unfortunately, obviously money. So there's a huge amount of money in the agro business, and this is why many of the products and offerings that come out from the food system are pushed on media and obviously for children and such like. So does that resonate with any of you at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Simple really, I mean you don't really have to be a genius to work it out, do you? It's like if you gave a lion a bowl of cornflakes all day long, you'd find very quickly the poor thing didn't feel too well, and within a few weeks he wouldn't be able to chase around the plains, would he? Because he'd have no energy. Because ultimately, you as a human being need to convert your food into energy, and foods that convert into energy are not foods such as wheat-based products, flour-based products. Again, you need to get back to your nuts, you need to get back to your berries, you need to get back to your raw meats. So meat is a fantastic thing. And obviously we've got the various quandaries of vegetarianism and veganism and their moral aspects, which of course have to be understood. And people obviously have a right to choose the things that they do, and obviously the way that animals on the planet are treated. But ultimately, if you look at the approach that we're discussing today from a therapy perspective, is that your clients, most of them, coming to see you primarily because of their poor nutritional choices, and you're expected to fix that. So you can do acupuncture, or you can do psychic surgery, or you can do many other things, but unless they actually change their nutritional choices, then their diseases are going to be very difficult to fix. And the other thing, obviously, you've got to go hand in hand is water. As a human species, which effectively is part animal really, you're designed to ingest large quantities of pure water. But of course what you have now is you have flavourings that are added to water. You obviously have alcohols and such like, and lots of fizzy drinks and sweet drinks. All of these things aren't treated the same as water by your body, and therefore your body again would be spending most of its time in a place of dehydration. So people with dry lips, people with dry tongues are in a state of chronic dehydration. And again, if they don't ingest more water, the healing that you offer and you do is going to take a long time to fix. So from my perspective, it would be very interesting when you're working with your clients and different subjects for you to try to encourage them into a more basic diet based on the right foods that actually provide energy. So the headaches go, the migraines go, the swelling of the stomach goes, even though of course young Andrew has one himself, but we won't go into that. Choices and all that. But again, if you can start to push some of your clients into thinking about their nutritional choices and starting to encourage a more intellectual view of the food choices, then the actual diseases that have manifested will start to recede quite quickly. And of course, when they start to recede quickly, then if you're working on the mental aspects or the spiritual aspects or other Eastern practices, they all work hand in hand, and the healing that you will be able to obtain will be immense. And this is where, you read these books, don't you? You see people that perform what could be termed as miracles, because someone's been very ill, close to death, and the next thing you know, they change their diet, they start to juice vegetables every day, they reject flour, alcohol, all those sorts of things, and the next thing you know, the body says, goodness me, at last, I've actually got something I can work with, and they start to heal, and they heal very quickly. There are other things of interest that I like to bring up just as a talking point, because it makes people pull funny faces, which I find quite extraordinarily funny. So, urine therapy, drinking your own urine. Has anyone tried that at all? You don't have to say, of course, because the embarrassment level would be quite high. But needless to say, I've made Andrew try it. Because I wanted to see, first of all, the face that he would pull when he tasted it. And we made him, well, we didn't make him, of course, but there was an encouragement to do it for quite some time. What he found is he started to feel much better, and his hair became very silky smooth. So all of these products that they spend fortunes on, you have the best product in your own body that doesn't actually poison you at all. It's just an excess, basically. And people that have, again, very bad illnesses, cancers and such like, the cancer cell is multiplying in the body because the body doesn't identify it as an external problem. If you start to drink your urine and you put that feedback loop in place, you start putting back the problem, and the body says, do you know what? That doesn't seem to be quite right. I think I'll send some antibodies to kill those cancer cells. So things like urine therapy, in the Western world, it's a no-speak topic. But in the Eastern world, they do it every day. You can watch Indians. The Indian fraternity is marvellously advanced in some of these types of things compared to the Western world, because they don't look at things as a bad thing or a socially inept thing to do. They just look at, does it work? And if it works, then therefore it must be something that you would do. Now, my dear, could I just ask you to provide some feedback if you wouldn't mind?
Yes, I'm feeling that my body from my neck down is very, very numb. Almost like the numbness that you get at the dentist. And that's about all that I've sensed so far.
Okay, so that will be the anaesthetic that you're feeling. So there's work currently going on in your womb on the left-hand side, as I would view it from the top, basically. Your right knee is also being worked on. There is other work happening in the top of your scapula on your left-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to close this off, and we're going to basically allow you to start feeling the rest of your body again. That seems to be the right thing to do to me. And then it'll be interesting to see what you actually feel yourself. And then hopefully we may have another person or someone else that would like to try this and see how they feel. I'm just going to remove my hands. Okay, so from the conversation that we've had so far, well, it's not really been a conversation because it's been me giving it to you, of course, but does anyone have any feedback or anything they'd like to say or questions they'd like to ask? Markets, and you walk past someone and they stare at you and you think to yourself, goodness, I don't really like you very much. And they're thinking the same thing, I don't like you either. Or you. But of course, you don't actually know each other. So how could that be? How could you stare at someone and them stare at you and instantly you don't like each other? Because of course, the etheric fields have already intersected before you've got to see them. And if your energy is very positive and theirs is very negative, the two obviously don't react very well, and therefore there's an instant dislike. Now, people that have got mental health problems will probably have negative attachments. Young Terry calls them dark force entities, which I think sounds very theatrical. We just call them negs, basically. Negative energies. So they have a spiritual entity with them connected into their etheric field that's negative, and that negative entity will put thoughts in their mind. It will try to orchestrate situations that are negative, so they'll get into arguments with people they bump into. If they're hearing voices, that negative entity will be talking to them constantly, telling them to do this or to do that. If they don't do this or if they don't do that, bad things happen to their family or their wives or their children. So of course, if you're open in that way and you're hearing these voices all the time, Unfortunately, you can't turn it off. And of course, this is why it drives people mad, quite literally. And they end up in psychiatric units with psychotic episodes, and it's a disastrously terrible place to be. Why does that happen? Well, it happens for different reasons. One of the key reasons, or one of the core reasons, is down to drugs, of course. Because when you're born as a fetus, you're born into this physical world that you call planet. You come in with your fantastic etheric field, and that's designed to protect you and to push back anything negative and to support you in your life as you grow. Now, as you grow from that fetus into a child, potentially, if you have a rather blessed life to start with, bad things don't happen to you, and that etheric field becomes stronger and it becomes better. And hopefully, if you eat the right nutritional requirements for the human being, as opposed to the McDonald's burger, etc., that etheric field gets bigger and stronger and stronger. And then when you come into contact with negativity, it doesn't have a chance, because you've got this fantastic etheric field that you've nurtured and grown, and it protects you in all aspects from a spiritual perspective. Conversely, if you haven't had a great life, or you've had trauma, whether it be physical or sexual or abuse from a young age, then potentially you get into this split personality situation whereby, as a child that's been going through a traumatic sequence of events, what tends to happen is the mind splits, and it creates two people, or sometimes more than two people. So you have the mini person that this is happening to, let's call them Fred, and then you have Brian, who's the person it's not happening to. And that child starts to live in this way. Sorry, my dear.
So, like Gollum. I just said like Gollum in The Hobbit, he has like two personalities.
Yes, rather like dear Andrew here, he has me and him. I'm the clever one, and he's not so clever, of course. But you're exactly right, young man, that's exactly. And of course, this is the thing, is that the television shows you all of these things, because the people that broadcast these programmes and make films, they know how this stuff works. They understand what's going on from a spiritual dimensional perspective, and they give it to you in films, because they realise that most people aren't able to actually assimilate this information. It's difficult. It's not what you're taught in school. You know, you're taught complete rubbish that you don't need. Algebra, case vested. Who's ever used algebra since they left school? Nobody, I suppose. Who learnt about mortgages and money and finance and interest rates? Nobody. Which would be more important for you? Possibly the financial teaching. So the school system has been designed to make sure you don't actually understand the things that are, in my opinion, of the most interest and the most benefit for you. As the young man says, Gollum has multiple personalities, and this is what happens with these children that go through different traumas. Now, different people obviously have different thresholds. So for some person, a terrible trauma may not cause them terrible emotional problems. And for someone else, a very minimal trauma may cause them exponentially terrible problems. So everyone is different in the way they work. But people that have had traumas in their young life, then they tend to, if you then augment that basically with bad nutritional choices, etc., the etheric field isn't actually helping them. So now the etheric field, if you can visualise, is what I term as perforated. It's got lots of holes in. And instead of being a completely joined field that's there to support and protect you, it's now got all these holes in, basically. And effectively, it's another one of my good analogies, I quite like it, is if you can imagine being in a room that's dark and there's nothing in there, and you're in there, and there's lots of these negative things around you, golems we'll call them, because I think that's an extraordinary word, golems. So we're in this room now with all these golems, and do you know what? They can't see us, because our etheric field is protecting us. So if you imagine we now take the child or the person that's had trauma and put them in the room with golems, and there's a light bulb in their heart centre, what can you now see? You can now see all of these fragments of light that come out of all these perforations. And the golem says, yum, yum, fantastic, there's a human being. And just so happens, I actually need to exist on their energy, or I can use their energy as my sustenance, my food. But the thing is, you see, I'm negative, so I don't really work on a high vibration. So I need to get their vibration down to a really low level that tastes great to me. And the way that I can do that is I can start to cause them lots of negativity, start to put bad thoughts in their mind, start to create fear in their life, start to create conditions whereby everything they do becomes negative. So the first thing I do is I connect to them through one of these perforations, I hook in my little pipe, and I sit back and say nothing. And that guy comes out of the room, he goes home, and spends time with his family, and then goes off to school with his friends. And now he's got a neg with him, and of course the neg's job is to make him more negative. So he starts to have terrible bad luck, would you believe? Falls over in the playground, hits his knee, walks into the door, swears at himself, kicks the door frame, you know, the sorts of things. And the day just gets worse and worse. So by the end of the day, this poor lad now goes home to his parents, he's had a terrible day, and he gets into arguments with them. So now he brings their vibration down, his has gone down dramatically, and of course this negative entity starts to think, now we're almost at the right frequency, I can start to feed effectively. I don't know if Gollum does feed, does he? What does Gollum like for his breakfast?
I don't know. It doesn't.
Raw
say.
fish.
Fish.
Raw fish.
Well, good choice. Nutritionally good. Chucking like raw fish. Yes. Excellent. So Gollum is having his raw fish effectively. So he's now existing on that substance, that negative frequency of this poor chap. And of course what he starts to then do is look around the family and think, has anyone else got perforations in their auric field that I can connect to? Because if I can connect to another one of the members of the family, I can now orchestrate arguments and I can orchestrate problems. And when I start to orchestrate these sorts of things, problems start to happen, frequency goes down, I get more substance. So as this happens, of course, what happens is the etheric field of the young lad now is breaking down even more. So now we've got more perforations happening. So of course what happens then is, calling a few of my friends, Gollum 2, 3 and 4 pop in, and we all connect. And then we connect to the parents as well. And then we start to cause as many problems as we possibly can on a day-to-day basis without being seen. So at this point, what we're doing is we're thriving on that negative energy, we're existing, that's our substance, we're looking forward to our tea, we can create another argument, and obviously this just goes on and on. And to move it to the other end of the scale, it gets to the point whereby we're basically controlling that person, and what we can then do, hopefully, is because this is the key from a negative perspective, is to break the etheric field to the point that we can actually coexist with the spiritual host. So, analogy again. So we've got a car with a driver, and we've managed to get the driver half out of the car, so he's kind of driving, but he's not really in it properly. So he's not driving the car very well at all. And now what we can do is we can open the passenger door and jump in with him. So we've got the physical body, that's a shell, and now we've got two spiritual entities inside that one physical body. We've got the core person that is still trying to drive with half their body outside and their hands in through the wheel, and the passenger now. And of course the passenger is starting to take control. They're starting to talk to the person, but they're clever. So these negative entities have a higher IQ in general than most of the people that they're actually connected to. So dear Andrew, bless him really, just to recap because this is quite funny, quite some time ago when he was working with people and we were actually connecting and talking to the negative entities, and this would go on for like an hour's conversation, and he was saying to me, it's fascinating, fascinating. I said, no, do you realise that none of it's true? These conversations you're having and the things they're telling you complete lies for the whole hour. You're wasting my time, you're wasting your own time. Your wife's made a cup of tea and you're still not in from the shed, you're going to be in trouble. So he started to realise that there's no real point talking to negs because they're never going to tell you the truth, basically. But of course, what tends to happen is the way that they're working is that they're becoming very much in control of that person now, and they start to separate that person from the family. And then, of course, the next best thing they can do now is try and push the drugs concept, because drugs break down the etheric field. So an etheric field that's already badly compromised, and you've got multiple entities connected, if they can get you into the drugs concept, you then space out, you're blissed out, you're having a great trip, you're talking to Jesus, which of course is Gollum and his friends, and Jesus is saying to you, do you give me permission to do whatever I like to you and to take over? And you're thinking, yeah, Jesus, that's really cool, you can do what you like. And now you've just given permission to a negative entity to do whatever it likes to your physicality, your spiritual body. And this is the end game in a way, really, because now they actually have a contract in place with you to actually take over completely and do what they want with your body. And now this is where you get moved into the harder drugs and you start getting into the self-harming problems and such like, because of course from a negative entity's coup d'etat perspective is that it wants you to take your life. Because when you take your life, there's a huge explosion energetically, and if that negative entity can basically accumulate your energy when you take your life, it can sell and trade that energy on an open market. So very much like you do with cows, you have a cow that you feed, it's great, you walk it into the cow shed, you milk it, milk is the substance, is the product, and then that gets sent to various places to make into cheese, it goes off to supermarkets, and you come along and buy it. So the same happens with your energy. Your energy can be traded on an interdimensional level between different entities, and someone that takes their own life ends up with a huge dramatic explosion of negative energy, which these entities, for them it's the end game, it's the thing they want. And this is why you tend to see the things that you see on television. So you see someone that's gone into a theatre, let's say, and killed half a dozen people. And what you'll find is that if the reporting is true and correct, which of course it probably isn't, but if you were to get a reporter that could actually tell the truth, because of course it's rather controlled, they would say that they heard voices that told them to do it. And the voices will have said, if you don't do this and don't do that, then we're going to kill your family or do very bad things to you. And if you look at the news and you look through the reports, you'll find that 90% of the people that do these terrible things are actually hearing the voices, and it's the voices that are telling them to do it, but they don't actually realise it's bad because of the consequence of not doing it is worse, if that makes sense. So this is why when you as therapists are working with people, it's so important to make sure that the etheric field of yourself is protected and you're adhering to good nutrition, drinking lots of water, and also when you actually connect with someone, you need to be thinking about, do they have negative entities with them? If they do, then that negative entity is going to be threatened by you. Potentially it's going to want to connect to you as well. So you need to be thinking about clearing them. And if you can't clear them yourself or you can't see them, then you just put the thought to your guide and say, if this client of mine has got lots of golems eating his fish, then could you please remove them first before we actually start my session? Because I'm not quite keen to deal with the after effects if that's not the case. So does that sort of ring true for you all and make sense?
Yeah.
Excellent. And it was such a good analogy, my friend. Go on. Yes, I'm going to use that. Terry, write that down.
I've made a note.
How are we doing for time, everyone? I'm obviously
It's an
not-
hour, so it's about time for a break.
Because I used to run over by hours, and
Yeah.
Jane would cut me off. Okay, so what I think we'll do is I'm going to return young Andrew to this vehicle that he calls his physical body. Not very well maintained in my particular opinion, but there we are. And I will return in, say, 15 minutes or so.
Thank you.
Thank